Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. We want to make sure you can hear us, so go ahead and type in the chat what you are looking forward to this spring. Wonderful. So if you can put in the chat what you're looking forward to this spring, it looks like y'all can hear us, so that's great. Sheila says they can hear us. Tori says sunny weather, lots of flowers. Wonderful. Seeing my plants grow is another one. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everybody for joining today. I'm Jana Starr, the Facilities and Events Manager and Sustainability Officer here at the North Carolina Botanical Garden. We are located in Chapel Hill and we are part of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So welcome. Today we're going to hear from some local experts on composting and how to use compost in your garden. So we're looking forward to this lunchtime workshop. Make sure if you live in our area, that you come by and visit the garden. We are open to the public Tuesday through Sunday, so we hope to see you here. We're open it's free to come and visit. Because of the size of our audience today, your video and audio will be muted and your video will be off. We are also recording this session today, and we'll be sharing the recording with all the participants who registered in the next week or so. And if you remain in the webinar, we take that as your consent to being recorded. We hope you'll join us for future programs this spring. Check out the link in the chat to register. And we do want your feedback after the webinar today. We're going to send out a survey and we'd love to hear how you think it went today. So I'm Jana, I'm one of your moderators, and we also have Malvika Venkatesh, who is our very own sustainability intern, and she's going to be one of your moderators as well. And we have a few presenters today. So we've got Kira Leveaux, who is the Recycling Education and Outreach Coordinator with Orange County Solid Waste Management. We have Claire Lorch, who is our Carolina Community Garden, or you'll hear it called CCG, Program Manager, and Simone Spicer, who is a CCG Compost Volunteer. So now I'm going to hand it over to Malvika, and she's going to tell us about how to use the Zoom webinar features for today.
Hi, so I just have a few quick notes on how we will be using Zoom's webinar features today. Please use the Q&A feature on the bottom to submit any questions you have for our presenters. We're going to be answering all Q&A questions at the end of our presentation. Please use the chat feature for any tech assistance requests for the moderators or to answer any of the poll questions asked of you by the presenter or moderators. We also have auto transcript turned on, so click on the live transcript on the bottom to change your settings for auto transcription.
All right, thank you, Malvika. All right, so we're going to do a quick poll. So we want to know where you are joining us from today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Let us know if you're from the Triangle, if you're in another location in North Carolina, outside of North Carolina, or outside the US. And if you're going to be calling in from any of those other places, feel free to write in the chat where you're calling in from today. Give it one more second or two. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So it looks like the majority of folks today are calling in from the Triangle region. And we have some other folks in North Carolina, some outside of North Carolina, and even outside of the US. So that's really exciting. Thanks for calling in today or joining us, I guess. All right. So for today's workshop, there's going to be 3 parts. It's a 1-hour workshop. The first part is going to be a Composting 101 from Orange County. The second part is going to be a Compost and Gardening at CCG demo that we have pre-recorded at the CCG. And then the last part is a live Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to pop those in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end. So we're going to do one other poll before we get started to kind of gauge our level of background and experience on this topic of backyard composting. how experienced are you in this topic? Go ahead and launch that. So the options are beginner, I'm excited to learn more. I've got some knowledge or experience, and the last is I call myself close to an expert, or maybe you are an actual expert. Let us know. Give it another minute. All right, so it looks like we have a mixed bag with some knowledge being the most prominent result, and then a beginner as the second most. So we hope to provide an overview. So this is a bit of a 101, but also you'll get a little bit of a deeper dive with the video and also the Q&A. We hope you can ask some of those questions from our experts. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna ask our first presenter to go ahead and unmute and put on your video, and I will stop my screen share so you can take over. Welcome, Kira. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, yes, I'm Kira Leveaux. I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator for Orange County. And let me start sharing my presentation.
All right, we can see your screen. Great.
Awesome. All right, so first I will be going over the composting basics. Then I'll talk about the importance of composting and why you should do it, and then how to get started composting at home in your backyard. So composting is a type of recycling. So oftentimes we think of recycling as, recycling your plastic water bottle or your aluminum can, and we don't think of the natural process that can be recycling, which is composting. So organic materials like leaves, grass, yard trimmings, and the food scraps from your kitchen can all be composted. These materials will all decompose over time and then eventually turn into a rich soil amendment that we call compost. So composting can benefit the earth in several different ways, and I think these two are two of the main ones that I wanted to discuss with you all today. So composting diverts valuable waste from the landfill. So instead of sending all of your food waste and yard waste to the landfill, you can turn it into compost. The EPA estimates that food scraps and yard waste account for more than 30% of what we throw away in the United States. And then specifically in Orange County, it accounts for 47%. So by composting, we can save our landfill space in our own community, and then landfill space overall, and reduce the pollution emitted by landfills. This also helps improve soil health and fertility. So by using compost, you can help get better soil structure and slow the runoff from rain. It also reduces the need for water and fertilizer for your lawn and your garden, and it can help promote higher yields for crops. Composting can also benefit you in several ways. So it can help you save money with reducing the need to buy fertilizer, and instead you can apply compost to your lawn and garden. It could lower the cost of water bill from not needing to water your plants and lawn as much, and then reduces the amount of trash bags you will buy and overall trash that you will generate. It can also save you a lot of time. So as many of you probably know, collecting the leaves, twigs, and other yard waste from your front and backyard can be super time consuming, and putting those in those bags for curbside collection by yard waste. And instead you could just use a lot of that and have a neat little pile next to your compost bin instead of collecting all of the bags. You can utilize them. And my favorite is developing a lifelong skill and passion by doing this. So learning how to compost can not only benefit you and your garden, but also your friends and family. As you learn the value of composting, you can teach your kids and your family members and close friends the value of conserving natural resources. And this is something that I've tried to do a lot this year. I've actually got my dad. I'm trying to start a compost bin for his apartment complex in Durham. And I know all of my friends are trying to start composting if they don't already. So this is a really valuable way to get others in your life to start composting. So there are several different options for composting, and I'll be talking about how to start backyard composting, but I wanted to make it known that there are several different ways that you can compost, and these don't have to be used exclusively. You can use them together. So I personally use backyard composting and a pickup service. It suits my lifestyle the best, and I know some other people that utilize two of these options. So backyard composting is ideal for those that have the yard space and then maybe have some garden and plants that they want to apply their finished compost to. A pickup service is ideal for those that may not have yard space or just want a no hassle option for reducing their food waste. And drop-off locations are ideal for those that don't want to pay for a pickup service and also don't want to manage a compost pile. So we do have 3 drop-off locations in Orange County for any Orange County residents to use. So to get started, you're going to want a container to collect your kitchen scraps. There are several different styles and sizes available online, and you don't have to buy a nice, shiny, fancy one. I know some people use Tupperware or they use a Ziploc bag and keep it in the freezer. So by no means do you have to go out and buy one. Orange County sells a countertop bin for $5. It's the one on the lower right-hand side of the screen with the light green lid. We do this by appointment only at the landfill. And so if you're interested, I can provide more information later on about how to set up an appointment. To get started with backyard composting, you'll first want to pick a location. So you want the location to be dry, level, and directly on soil. So you don't want to put it on gravel or any pavement. You want it to be directly on the soil. And you can choose a shady area. Some sun is okay, and some people prefer less shade and more sun. So that can also depend on the type of compost bin you're using, or if you don't have a bin and you're creating a pile with pallets or chicken wire, that can determine how much shade versus how much sun you want. So with tumblers and the earth machine, those are often made out of black plastics, which can absorb a lot of heat. So you want to keep that out of direct sunlight. You also want it to be convenient to get to, but not too close to your house. So we suggest around 10 feet away. And then also think about providing room to expand if needed. So a lot of people can start a pile and then realize, oh, they're creating more food waste than they thought, and they want to expand. So that's something to keep in mind when choosing a location. So there are different types of composters. I'll be going over the DIY bin, pile, pallets, and wire circle that you can make, a tumbling composter, and then earth machine and other static composters. And another note is that a bin isn't needed to make compost. You can have a pile in and of itself. People just like to use bins in order to help keep their pile neat and tidy. Bins also are good at helping retain the heat and moisture inside of your pile and then keeping out pests. So a lot of the times if your pile is open, it's a lot more exposed and the odors can get out, which can attract pests, while closed compost bins are a lot better at containing the odors and making sure no pests and rodents get in. So first is the bin pile DIY. So I've included 3 different pictures here, which are 3 most common materials used when people are doing the DIY themselves. The ideal size for this is around a 3-foot cube. You don't want to get any larger than a 5-foot cube. because people have difficulties starting to turn their pile and tending to it, and it can become anaerobic in the middle once it gets too big. So pallets, concrete blocks, mesh fencing are three of the most common materials used. So the top picture is what someone used with pallet boards. Beneath that is concrete blocks, and then to the lower right is chicken wire, mesh fencing, any sort of material like that. These bins are good for retaining sufficient heat in your pile and keeping your pile warm. And the three different setups here are for depending how much food waste you produce and how much finished compost you want. So at the top is a 3-bin setup, which is one for raw food scraps, the first one. The middle one would be for the active compost, and then the last one is for your finished product. So you don't need to have a 3-bin setup. This just helps people kind of keep it organized and know when to switch things over. The one at the lower right is more of a static composting setup where it's just one pile. So there's no need to shift materials over from one another. And then the one with the concrete blocks is a 2-pile setup. So again, when you are picking a location, you do want to consider maybe expanding or providing room to expand. So if you start with a 1 or 2-bin setup, you could easily add another if you want to expand. And oops, didn't mean to go. And then with piles like these, you want to consider how much rain could get on your pile. So in the top picture, you see a roof over the pile where the finished compost would be, which is good because you don't want to oversaturate your compost pile and expose it to rain. So that's something else to consider if you want to go through with this method. You could use a tarp or some other sort of lightweight cover. So the pros and cons of this type of setup is that you can build it and style it yourself. So you can kind of make it fit your backyard aesthetic, or just use materials that you're most familiar with or that you like. It's also a very low cost option. A lot of the times pallets are given out for free. You can probably find some on Craigslist or maybe some Facebook groups that post curb alerts. These are really easy to use, and then you can easily expand them to manage more compost down the line if you realize you're creating more compost than you thought initially. The cons is that these are more difficult to make rodent proof. So you have to really get creative with trying to keep the rodents out. I know some people try to include more fencing on the side or another pallet, but rodents are diligent. So you may just have to get creative in that sense. And then again, it can be more exposed to rain unless you add a roof or some other lightweight cover to your compost bin. Moving on to the tumbling composter. These are really easy to use and turn. These are also a great option for smaller yards. They don't take up much space. And the one pictured here is actually a dual bin setup. So there are tumblers that just come with one of the turning options. And so you can slightly expand to get 2. I don't believe they make them with 3, but I could be wrong. These tumblers are also really good for containing the odor inside and then keeping any critters and rodents out. So they have the sliding doors and no other entry for any rodents to be able to open. The cons is that people have noticed the compost can dry out in the middle. So you want to make sure that you're turning this at least every 3 to 4 days and maybe adding water if you notice that it does get dry, and that it has a limited capacity. So something like what we saw in the earlier slide, when you're building your own pile with pallet boards, you have a lot more room for your compost. But with using a bin or a container like this, you do have a limited capacity. And then with tumblers, you want to not get any more full than 3/4. Otherwise, it can get really difficult to turn and dry out in the middle. For earth machines or static composters in general, this earth machine is a type of static composter. It comes with sufficient ventilation, as you can see by the little slits on the side. This is also rodent proof, so it has a locking lid on the top and then a door on the bottom. It's also really good at containing the smell. And best of all, it is made with minimum 50% post-consumer recycled material. So we really love and support when companies are using recycled content in their products to encourage the use of recycled materials over virgin materials. One of the downsides of this is that it is smaller than some of the other composters. It doesn't give you room to maybe double up like the tumbler we saw in the last slide. I do know several people that have 2 earth machines, so that's always an option and kind of gives you an out for expanding if you do need more space. And this is the composter that Orange County sells for $50, again by appointment only on Wednesdays. So now getting into what you can compost. This isn't a full list of what you can and cannot compost, just the general groups. So one, you're going to have your food scraps from your kitchen, your yard waste and garden clippings, leaves, and then your grass clippings. Treated grass and yard trimmings shouldn't be included if any chemical fertilizer was used. Some fertilizer is okay, especially if it wasn't applied recently, but it's just something to know if you do use chemical fertilizer on your lawn. What not to compost in your backyard. Weeds, those are spread by root or runner, or that have already gone to seed, and diseased plants you'll want to keep out of your backyard compost. So rhizomes and seeds do not die in the composting process. Any finished compost that you have that did happen to include some of these weeds or the seeds from them, if you apply them to your garden, they will regrow and you'll have to deal with the problem all over again. No one wants that. Weeds are hard enough to deal with. Ash, so some people do say that they can include some ash in their compost pile, so that's more of an up to you. You can play around with putting a little bit of ash in to see if anything happens or if it affects your compost in any negative way. It does throw off the pH, so I would recommend not including it in large quantities and test it out at first. Painted and treated wood, you don't want to put in your backyard compost because they can contain toxic chemicals. Meat, bones, dairy products, oils, fats, and grease will all create odors and attract rodents and flies, so you want to leave those out. Pet waste, we get this question quite often. People want to know if they can compost their cat and dog poop. And we say no because one, it attracts pests and could spread disease. And the pathogens and bacteria inside of the waste often will not be killed off in your compost pile at home, so don't put it in there. With compostable plastics, some compostable plastics will specify if they're okay for home compost, while others require an industrial composting facility to be composted. So just be careful and watch out for any specifications and make sure it's certified compostable material and not just biodegradable or says compost without any sort of certification. And then black walnut tree leaves, branches, and husks release a substance called juglone, which can be harmful to plants, especially those that are sensitive to that material, like tomatoes, potatoes, cabbage, peppers, and then some other perennials and shrubs. So balancing the browns and greens, You want to balance your carbon and nitrogen. So your carbon is coming from your browns, which is dried leaves, twigs, straw, hay, some old mulch and potting soil, sawdust, again, clean wood chips, not treated, paper and cardboard. And then your greens will be materials that are decomposing a lot faster. So grass clippings, plants, cut flowers, the stuff coming from inside of your kitchen. So fruits and veggie scraps, coffee grounds, filters, tea bags, and be careful with your tea bags that they don't have any sort of plastic lining in the middle, or remove the staple from the end of the tag. Bread, rice, grains, pasta, eggshells. It helps to sometimes grind up the eggshells, but not required. And then livestock manure from herbivores only. And getting into your compost ratio with your browns and greens. So the easiest to maintain is a 50-50 ratio. And this depends on the type of composter you want to be. So if you want to be more lazy, a 50-50 ratio is really easy to maintain and is about a medium speed for getting to your finished compost. Other people want to get to their finished compost a lot faster, while others, they're really lax about it and are more so doing it to reduce their food waste. So that can kind of help you decide what ratio you should follow. You want to layer your browns and greens. So every time you put some browns or greens in, you want to layer it with the other material. The water content in your pile should be around 40 to 60%, so feel as wet as a squeezed out sponge. When you're starting your pile, we recommend making a base layer of the brown material at the bottom. This can be cardboard, newspaper, twigs, and leaves, and the twigs at the bottom really help aerate the pile. And then we also highly recommend shredding the browns for a faster decomposition. So it isn't required, but again, your greens are going to be decomposing a lot faster than your browns, so shredding the browns up will only help. Here are some common problems that people have, especially when starting out in their pile. So if you realize your materials aren't decomposing, you'll want to add some water, and then add some greens, and then turn the pile. So you can do one of these and then see if that helps, or all three of them at the same time. I usually try adding some greens and turning my pile. I have a tumbler in the back, and so I know I try and be conscious about turning it every 3 to 4 days. If you have rotten odor coming from your composter, try turning it more, adding the coarse brown materials, which kind of helps cover up the odor, and then burying food scraps within your pile can help kind of conceal the odor coming from your decomposing food. If your pile's having trouble heating up, try making the pile larger and providing some insulation on the side. So if you think a lot of wind is cutting through it, or if it's just really exposed in your backyard, maybe consider placing it near a fence, or putting some chicken wire around it to help. And then also try adding water while turning it and adding greens. So finally, at the end of it all, you want to know if your compost is done. So your compost should have an even dark brown color. It should be crumbly and loose in texture, so you don't really see any big chunks in there anymore. It should have a really nice earthy smell. I remember people always loving the way their finished compost smells. And then the temperature of the compost, it should no longer be hot. It should be the outdoor temperature. So it can take several weeks to a year or even longer to get finished compost, depending on the composting methods you use. So this can get down to the ratio, the bin you use, how active you are with it. But in the end, it's all a learning process. There's no, one perfect recipe for compost. It depends on your lifestyle, the food you eat, how many people are in your household. So the more you know, the better it will be and the easier it'll get over time. And that is it from me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kira. That's so informative, and I'm learning even though I've been composting for years. I'm still learning along the way, and I really appreciate some of your insight, especially about moisture and the process itself. And I love that you can be a lazy composter and it can still work even if it takes a little while. So it's a pretty easy thing to get into if you haven't tried it before. So thank you so much for your insight. I really appreciate it. So we're going to now transition to the second part here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right, and we are going to do the composting and gardening. This second portion is more focused on how to use compost on your garden, and we're going to hear from our friends from the CCG. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. We were having a little bit of a speaker issue with some fuzzy sounds, and I hope that does not come up again. And if it does with some audio issues, we're going to send the YouTube link so you can watch this on YouTube. You're welcome to go ahead and watch it there if that's a little bit better for you. And we'll send the link, and also you can, you should be able to control the audio settings so you can also stay in webinar. But if you need to pop out and pop back in, we're going to be here. It's about a 15-minute video. All right, so here we go.
My name is Claire Lorch, and I'm the garden manager for the CCG. All the food we raised out here goes to UNC's house. Keepers.
I'm Simone Spicer. I'm a volunteer at the Carolina Campus Community Garden, and I am one of the compost co-managers. So I help keep the compost up and running, and I've been a volunteer here for about 6 years, I think going on 7 at this point. Yeah.
The advantages of using compost in the garden, gosh, there are quite a few. So compost adds fertility to the soil. It helps cut down on diseases and pests. It helps the plants develop a good, strong root system. I think it helps the soil maintain or retain water and cut down on erosion. And it certainly contributes to the microorganisms, the beneficial ones for the soil. So all around, it's great stuff.
So we get food scraps donated from community members, and they leave them in one of our 2 donation bins outside of the garden. And then at our work days, we take the donated food scraps and chop them up and add them to some of our active piles, which we maintain and add to regularly until they become big enough that we turn them to curing and let them sit for a while and keep turning them to add oxygen until everything is broken down and we have our black gold that we can use in the garden beds. So before COVID, we just had these bins that you could come and drop off your compost anytime. But since COVID, we now have these hand-free compost systems. So you come and just use your foot to open the bin and drop your food scraps off. But we really ask that people not leave their plastic bags when they drop off their food scraps. So just dump out the food and take the plastic bag or whatever you have your food scraps in with you.
I like to use a reusable container so that I don't have to worry about plastic bags or anything else. So this is what I use.
One thing to keep in mind if you're going to be donating your food scraps somewhere is to try to make sure that they aren't too smelly if you can. So if you want to put them in the freezer, that can really help because they won't start to break down if you have the freezer space, or even just trying to take your donations more regularly so they don't start to smell too much in your house, it'll benefit you and the people where you're taking your donations. So for compost to happen, you need water and you need oxygen. You also need your green and brown matter, so your food scraps or whatever you're going to be adding to the pile, and then also some source of brown matter. We use leaf mulch here. You can also use leaves just straight off of the tree once they fall off the trees. It helps to have them broken down a little bit more. So those are the important components for your compost. And in terms of a best site for compost, I think pretty much most locations can work. You want to make sure you have a good space and something that you can maybe protect from pests, I think is an important thing. It can be helpful if it's in the sun to help it stay warm in the winter, but then that can also maybe dry it out a little more in the summer. So just paying attention to the conditions can be helpful for managing your compost. So some of the key ways of knowing that compost is ready to use, I like to smell it and just have a sense of whether it smells earthy, neutral. There shouldn't be any lingering food or other smells. Also, it should look very brown and crumbly. So no big clumps, no huge chunks, generally no food scraps left. Sometimes there might be things that take a long time to break down, like avocado pits or eggshells, but those kinds of things you can either pull out or sift out, but you generally don't want any big chunks. So those are the main things that I look for. So curing piles are the piles that we're letting sit for a little longer until they're finished breaking down. And the black gold is the compost that is ready to use. So curing piles will be ones that still have some chunks of food scraps that need to break down, or they're still a little warm as the decomposition is happening, or they just haven't quite gotten to the neutral smelling compost that you like to use on your garden beds. Usually we'll have a pile that's active for about 1 or 2 weeks, depending on how quickly we're adding food scraps to it. And then it will sit in the curing phase and get turned for anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks up to maybe 6 months in the winter when it's not as warm outside. And then it'll get switched to black gold and get used as fast as the garden needs it. Yeah, I think it can be helpful to have even just 2 bins if you want to have one that's active at a time and then the other one that's sitting and breaking down. But if you only have space for 1 bin, then you can have just be taking out black gold from the bottom, because sometimes the things at the bottom will finish earlier. So that's one way I would suggest managing space. I think some of the main things to avoid putting in your compost are things that are going to attract pests. So anything in lots of oil, meats, things like that you want to stay away from. Also, putting in any weeds or diseased plants is something to avoid too, because sometimes if the compost doesn't get hot enough to kill them off, you can end up spreading weeds or diseases throughout your garden. So here at the CCG, we put in our compost food scraps, which includes fruits, veggies, grains. We take coffee filters, tea bags. Sometimes we get a little bit of dryer lint, that'll go in there too, eggshells. But we don't take any meat or dairy products or anything like that. And yeah. There are a few things that you want to watch out and not use too much of in your compost. So citrus is one of those things. If you use too much citrus, you might affect the pH of your soil. It's something we haven't worried about too much here because we don't get an overwhelming amount of citrus to make it a problem, but it is something to watch out for, just to make sure you're not, just using a whole bunch of lemons. Make sure it's balanced with other things. And coffee grounds, I think we have never had a problem. We take tons of coffee grounds as well. So this pile is one that was just recently turned to curing. So we were adding to this just a couple weeks ago. So you can see the food is not fully broken down. And with something like this, I would definitely recommend letting it sit for a few more weeks before you use it. But that being said, if it doesn't get to the same total level of being broken down that some of our other piles look like, it's still probably okay to use as long as it's been sitting for a long enough period of time and you're pretty sure there's no big clumps of food still around. And one other thing I'll mention to avoid are the stickers on fruits and vegetables. We really try to ask the people who are giving us donations to take those off, but you can see that That doesn't always happen, and it's really hard to pick them off once they're in our donation pile. So that's something to definitely try to avoid to save yourself work later. So we like to sift our compost whenever we can, which helps to take out any of the big chunks that are remaining. Sometimes those are just really big chunks of food that might not have broken down, or avocado pits that will take a long time to break down. So sifting helps remove some of those chunks, which we sometimes throw back into other piles or just toss off to the side. I don't know if you can see, but there's some pretty big chunks here that just haven't quite broken down. So those are the kind of thing that we can put back in the other piles and only use some of the stuff that is ready to go. The basic tool for composting, I would say, is a shovel. You can use that to chop up your food scraps. You want to try to get them into about inch-sized pieces so that it's a little easier for them to break down. We also here use this kind of shovel-like thing with a flatter end to help help chop up the food scraps. And the shovel is also what you're going to use to turn the pile. And then we also have a sifter that we use to sift our compost, and then the bins themselves, of course. So in turning, we just take it out. And we actually also have some wood boards that we use to turn the pile. We'll take it all out onto the wood board and then put it back in. And that's to avoid, we used to end up with some big pits here when we were turning our piles, and taking all the compost out and putting it back in, but invariably pulling some of the dirt with it. So now we use the wood boards to try to save some of the soil on the outside of the compost. The main thing to do to care for your compost is to make sure it has enough oxygen. So be turning it regularly, especially in the first few weeks after you were adding to it. The other things to watch for are to make sure that it has enough water, especially maybe in the summer when it tends to dry out. But also you don't want it to be too wet, because that can lead to clumping and big masses of food that might not break down. So turning can help to get rid of some of the water as well, as can sometimes adding leaf mulch or leaves if those are dry, but watch out if those are wet, because that might add more moisture than you need.
For our brown material, we use shredded leaf mulch, and we are lucky that we have a great source. But if you're not so lucky and you have lots of leaves in your yard, then you can certainly rake them up, and if you want to break them down, you can mow over them, and you might also be able to contact somebody in your community where you may be able to pick up some leaf mulch. We generally add anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of compost probably over the year that we incorporate into our beds. If we're using it, say, as a top dressing or as a mulch, then it's more like 1/4 or 1/2 an inch. And I think as long as your compost is made up primarily of fruits and vegetables, you probably don't need to worry too much about adding too much. I think it's when you have things like manure that it gets a little bit more complicated, and we don't take manure in ours.
Are there like certain plants though you use more compost for and others that you use less?
No, we treat all of our plants equally.
Great.
We actually use compost pretty much year round, but generally we do the major adding of compost right before we plant. So, and out here, we're fortunate to be able to plant 3 seasons. So we're planting in the spring, the summer, and the fall. And each of those seasons, we generally add compost if we have it. I can really see the impact of compost when I go home to my own garden. I have a composter at home, and we add compost, but it's not anywhere to the degree that we do it here. And the soil here is so much more fertile than, I'm embarrassed to say, than my garden at home.
This is a bed that we just added compost to. We haven't spread it yet to kind of form the bed, but we just added the compost. And we'll usually add the compost anytime before we start planting, often just a few days before, but sometimes a little longer, like with the case of this bed. So yeah, we just add the compost onto the bed and then kind of spread it throughout the bed and mix it in with the soil that's already there. It's not gonna look great, I don't think, by the time I'm done with it.
If you're interested in starting a community compost operation, you'll first, of course, need to find a good location that is hopefully fairly pest-proof. As we mentioned earlier, you might want to have it be in the sun so that it will, particularly in the wintertime, it'll break down fairly quickly. When we first started our compost operation, we had 3 bins, and I think that's a great way to start, but even 2 bins will do the trick. You also want to have a place for people to drop their compost off, and hopefully that's something that can be available at all times, but maybe just during your garden work days. You'll also need to make it clear to the people who are donating compost what you accept and what you don't accept, because everybody might have a different idea of what they think can go into compost. You'll want to have a source of water because it's important to keep the compost moist, and of course you'll need tools to chop and to turn.
All right, well, hope that you enjoyed that part of the workshop. Thank you so much, Claire and Simone, for your expert advice, and it was so good to see CCG, and I look forward to warm days again, because now we're back in the 40s, so hopefully we get the nice warm weather soon. So we're going to move to the last part, which is our Q&A. We've got a lot of questions that have come into the Q&A section here, so Malvika's going to go ahead and start to ask some of those, and I ask all of our presenters if you could put your video on, that would be wonderful, and we will get those questions going.
Ah, great. Hi, everyone. I see all your questions. They're very good. So I'm gonna, hopefully the video at the CCG clarified some of the ones that are in this Q&A, but we can go ahead and go through all of them. So the first question's from Crystal Lorenzo, and she says, can you share more about why the earth machine should be placed directly on soil? Her neighbors who compost have recommended placing the compost on top of another surface so it doesn't get inundated with roots from nearby trees or bushes. So I think, Kira, this might be a good question that you may be able to answer.
Yeah. It's not a requirement to put your compost bin on soil. It's just a suggestion, because on soil, then the other microorganisms and worms and other live creatures in the ground will connect to your compost on the top, and a lot of the times are really helpful for breaking down the materials in your compost bin. So it's only beneficial to keep it on the soil, but if you in your area are having trouble with roots from bushes and trees, then maybe it's best for your location to keep it on pavement or somewhere else. I've just always heard and from experience know it's best directly on soil. So that's why we recommend that.
Great. And Claire or Simone, you might be able to answer the next one, because you do have an open compost system at the garden, and Dr. Linda Spicer is wondering, how do you keep animals out of the bin pile setups? Sure, I can talk a little bit about that. So at the garden, we do have a fence around the whole garden, which really helps to keep animals out of the entire area. And then for the piles themselves, we use some chicken wire on the back, which can help. Although it has been a problem that we've struggled with before, and we just try to make sure we keep turning it pretty actively to note if there are any animals getting in, and if so, take any measures that we need to control that. Yeah. Great. Colleen asks, should the bins you have, should all of them have roofs or like covers?
I can provide an answer and then Simone or Claire can add. It's only helpful if all three of them have a roof, but it's definitely not needed. People recommend that at least over your finished compost, you can have a roof so it doesn't become oversaturated and affect the finished product. But again, it's not a requirement, just a recommendation.
Yeah, and I can tag on to that really quickly. We don't have roofs on any of ours. We just make sure that we turn them regularly when they do get very wet, and that works well.
A few people actually asked this. I know you guys mentioned that you didn't take like dog waste, but a few people asked, can you compost chicken poop or deer poop?
Yes, you can. I don't know if CCG specifically accepts them, but you can put them in your backyard compost, and then industrial composters would also accept it.
Great. The next question's from Sheila, and she's asking, what's the reason for brown and green? She does this at her compost at home, but why is this necessary? Maybe Simone, you could touch on this.
Sure, yeah. So brown and green are providing different sources of nutrients. So the browns are heavier in carbon and the greens are heavier in nitrogen, and having both of them is important for the decomposition process. I don't know if Kira, you want to add anything to that, or?
No, you got it.
Cool. And Kira, there's been a lot of questions about the Earth machine. It seems really popular. Nina's asking, how does the Earth machine turn?
So there are two ways, and I've seen people do it either way. So there's, if you remember the picture, there's a turning lid on the top, and then there's kind of a little door on the bottom side. So oftentimes people will just take the lid off of the top and use a garden stake, or I'm blanking on the name, but the like, three-pronged thing that you can stick in there, and it helps you turn the compost. The top seems like the easiest way to do it, and the bottom door is really for getting the finished compost, the black gold material, out from the bottom. And so you can check on it. So the easiest way to do it is from the top and to turn it.
Okay, great. And some people are saying they're having problems with a lot of gnats or bugs that are coming out of their Earth machine or just their compost space in general. Do you have any comments on this? Is this something to be worried about?
With that, a lot of the times it could help to just bury your food scraps deeper in the pile, because that one helps with the odor, but also that more quickly decaying material. If it's deeper in the pile, it could reduce the amount of flies and gnats. But in the summer, I think it's just more common to see those around your compost, and they're not harmful at all. I don't know if Simone and Claire want to speak on general flies and gnats in regards to compost piles.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we notice as well. I think our strategy is often also to turn it too, just to add oxygen and help everything break down. We also often will notice more flies and gnats if we get something in our
donation that shouldn't have been in there. So often if someone accidentally puts some meat or something cooked in oil, that often can increase the fly problem. So that's something to watch out for too.
The next question is from Susan and Claire. Since you run the CCG, I think you'd be a great person to answer this. Where is the CCG and what days and times can compost be dropped off?
I can answer that one. Yeah, we are located on 212 Wilson Street. So we're very close to the Carolina Inn off Cameron Avenue. And if you Google Carolina Community Garden, you can find specific directions. And we accept compost donations 24/7. That hands-free compost containers, they're located outside the garden gates, so people can drop off their compost anytime, and people do. No matter when we're out there, inevitably we see people coming and dropping off their compost. So bring it on.
The next question comes from Amanda, and I'm actually intrigued by this. She says she's heard that you can use a blender to liquefy compostables from the kitchen and apply the product to garden bed soil and turn it in the soil. I don't know if any of you have heard about this process, but if you have, is this something that could potentially work?
I've heard about it. I haven't personally tried it. And I think more so I've heard about it in terms of people liquidating all of their compostable materials, but then putting it in their compost pile so that it breaks down a lot quicker, not so much applying it directly to your garden bed soil. So I'd be interested if Simone or Claire has tried this or had any experience with it. I don't know if it works, but it doesn't sound like it would hurt.
Yeah, that's something new that I've never heard about. So it could be
it's
interesting to do a little more research on that.
probably time for one more question.
Okay. Which one? So some people are asking that they're having trouble getting to the final composting stage, and this might be due to their composting setup or the layering of their browns and greens. Is there something that, any tips on how to get to that final stage that's like earthy smelling compost?
I'll let the CCG people take this one.
Simone, you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that making sure you're turning regularly would be the first thing that I would say. You can also see if your pile is getting hot, I think is a good way to tell whether the decomposition is happening. You want to make sure that it is getting hot in the initial stages, although by the time you want to use it, it should be cooled down. So I would check on that and then kind of go through some of the great tips that Kira gave for things to do if your compost isn't quite breaking down as you would want it to.
Great. And I see that we have a few more questions that are unanswered, but if we didn't get to your question today, we'll be sending up a follow-up email answering those questions and providing some other resources for composting in your area.
Yep, thank you so much to all the presenters, and thank you to everyone who's attended today, and also thank you to Malvika, our sustainability intern. It's been such a joy having your help with the garden. So we really appreciate all the expert advice we had today. Please do take the survey when we send it out in the email and let us know if you have another topic you'd like to see. We're trying to do more of these sort of 101 workshops to get people more inspired and educated on how to really help reduce their environmental their carbon footprint and their impact at home. So we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Please do take a minute to type in the chat your answer to this question. What do you hope to implement after today's workshop? So if you were inspired by something or you want to try something new, go ahead and put it in the chat. And we'd love to hear what stuck with you from today. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and we hope you have a great weekend and take care. We'll see you next time.